grace in vain.
Good morning. Welcome to Unitarian Universalist Community Church. Our building is on Shaver Road in Portage, Michigan, on the ancestral lands of the Peoria Potawatomi people. We pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. It is the little brick church with the rainbow flag and the Black Lives Matter banner out front, because we believe that love is love, and it is our responsibility to dismantle white supremacy and build a beloved community that benefits us all. Our church is served most Sundays by our minister, Reverend G. Ludwig McCartney. We are a community on diverse spiritual journeys, and other Sundays we enjoy hearing differing points of view from guest ministers, lay leaders, or as in today, guest speakers. My name is Regina Nelson, and I'm happy to be your lay leader. If you are joining us on Facebook for the first time, we're excited that you tuned in. We invite and encourage you to attend the Zoom coffee hour following the service to get to know us better. You can find the link to coffee hour in the comments section of the video. To learn more about our church, including our programs for children and youth, and other opportunities to connect with us during the week, visit our website at www.uucommunitychurch.org. Special thanks to everyone who's helping to make this morning's service possible: our musicians, our tech team, and you. Now, Eric Nelson will light our chalice.
On this day, around the world, Unitarian Universalists light the chalice. We are truth seekers. We seek a truth that is so strong it can withstand our questioning and our doubts. The flame reminds us of what we have in common here, and so we bring it to life. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share.
Our reading today in honor of Justice Ginsburg is from Tiffany Mueller of Let America Vote. Our hearts are shattered. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a hero in every sense of the word. Her loss is devastating, and there are no words that adequately express the sorrow or fear that our nation is feeling as we mourn her together. Justice Ginsburg was a trailblazer for so many women. She was a giant and a pioneer in the fight against discrimination. She was tough as nails, and she spent her life leading with strength, courage, and faith. She was relentless and revolutionary in her unwavering commitment to the Constitution and her pursuit of equality and justice for all Americans. Justice Ginsburg said she would like to be remembered as someone who used whatever talent she had to do her work to the very best of her ability. If she taught us anything, it is to keep up the fight. We take strength and comfort in her words and in her example, most of all in her unrelenting fight to better our country. She showed us why we must never give up. Her rest is earned. It's our time to fight. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers. Sholanna Lewis has established and led the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation at the Kalamazoo Community Foundation and is now the TRHT Director. Prior to leading TRHT, she was a member of the grant-making team at the Kalamazoo Community Foundation. and has also served as a center manager at Arcus Center for Social Justice Leadership at Kalamazoo College. She earned a bachelor's degree in political science and psychology from University of Southern California and a master's in public administration from Western Michigan University. Captain Stacey Ledbetter served over 25 years at the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. Her expertise is in community policing and cultural awareness training. Currently, Captain Ledbetter is committed to doing trainings and special projects through her company, Black and Blue Networking and Consulting, LLC. She is also on the leadership team for TRHT Kalamazoo. In addition to having lead roles on the TRHT Law Design and Racial Healing cohorts. She earned both her bachelor's degree in criminal justice and master's degree in public administration from Western Michigan University. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Sholanna and Captain Stacey.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having us at your service today. We're so honored and happy to be here, and thank you for such kind words. We're really mourning several losses of great leaders this year, and then this week was no different. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and we will have some slides for you. And I think at the end, we'll have some informal Q&A. So once again, thank you so much for having us. Okay, I hope you all can see my screen. Today, we're discussing The Revolution Starts With You, a talk about TRHT Kalamazoo. TRHT stands for Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. There's a lot just in that title, and I know I'm truly honored to be blessed to do this type of work full-time, more than full-time. So many have fought to do this type of work as a volunteer and for free, and risk so much to champion social justice and social change. So I feel truly honored to be doing this work. The Truth, Racial Healing, Transformation Kalamazoo is one of 14 sites across the country that is doing this very place-based work. We really got started after an amazing thought leader, Dr. Gail Christopher, she's quoted here, really was looking at how do we heal as a nation? How do we move forward as a society truly? And she looked at many processes internationally similar to the TRC's Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, the most famous being in South Africa. And she convened many leaders in this country, about 174, to explore this question: what would it look like to both on a national level and on a community level do the work of healing? And transformation was really where they landed. Is not necessarily a reconciliation, because many of us in this country don't have anything positive to reconcile back to, between the history of chattel slavery and the history of genocide and colonization. It would be really hard to say we could reconcile here. But what we can do is tell the truth about what happened, acknowledge the harm, heal, and transform our society. And so that was the vision. And you can see Dr. Gail Christopher is quoted here. She's since retired from the Kellogg Foundation, but continues to do this work in championing actually legislation at the national level around doing very similar work. Right now, really focused on place-based. However, in our 14 locations, there's another 3 right here in Michigan in Battle Creek, Lansing, and Flint, in addition to Kalamazoo, that we actually, Stacey and I work across the sites a bit, and Stacey in particular is continuing to do leadership with and do racial healing work across the sites. So it's really amazing what the vision was, and we felt honored for Kalamazoo to be a part of this. And one of the things that is quite fascinating about this work is that it really merges this idea of interpersonal and personal growth and work, and systemic and societal culture shifts. So many times we think about either personally, am I racist? Was I treated in a way that exhibited racial bias as a person of color? Or we're thinking about disparities in education, disparities in employment. This framework really allows us to think about both at once and how they interact with each other. So it's really important that cultural work isn't always present in other reconciliation processes, where we're not just acknowledging harm, but we're also moving forward to say, how can we do better? How can we transform? How can we transform a culture and belief system so that we don't have these issues in the future? Because at underneath every policy decision, there's a belief system that's guiding it. The model that we're following really focuses, like I said, leading with truth and then leading with racial healing. And those things really do go hand in hand. It's really hard to heal when harm is not acknowledged and recognized. And so that's so important for us. And then on a local level, lead with a coalition, cross-sector coalition, including faith-based organizations, institutional leaders, grassroots leaders, youth, etc. And so we're really just so blessed the partnership with Isaac from the beginning. So they've been really involved on the leadership team, as is Stacey, and many others. And so we really think about our coalition as the TRHT Kalamazoo leadership team, and then all of the design teams that work under the leadership team. And then the idea is, once we have truth and racial healing and we center those practices, we can then transform our systems, law, economy, separation. And separation really is about all the ways in which our society keeps us separated, both culturally and physically, through education, through housing, through public space, and the way transportation is set up, where public parks are, who has access to what services. Every way we're separated. So that's the way that this model is set up. And in Kalamazoo, we have design teams specifically working on every single one of these issues uniquely, and then we come together as a leadership team to connect. So I know Dr. Regina is involved in actually a few of those teams, and many of you all hopefully have heard of some of the work we did in housing with Isaac around the Chapter 18 housing ordinance. So that's a little bit about what TRHT is. And one of the things that, I would love for folks to do, if you're here with us on Zoom, as we read this idea of what it means to center healing in relationships, if you could just put a word in the chat that resonates with you from this definition, because this is really what TRHT is all about, is to end racism by jettisoning the deeply embedded belief of a hierarchy of human value that sustains racism. And in order to do that, like I mentioned, we have to recognize the history and the trauma and create a sustained structural change as well. So I would love to hear from you all what words resonate from this. So just put them in the chat if you can. Thank you. What is racial healing? So the way we really think about our work is really important. We have to recognize the past, both individually and collectively, and how it affects us on a personal level, committing to a journey. And then listening, acknowledging mistakes. Accountability is so important. We can't have really healing relationships if we're not accountable to one another and accountable to previous harm. And it really looks different for everyone. Everyone needs something different to heal. Everyone's experienced this hierarchy of human value differently. And the hierarchy of human value really was a new concept to me with TRHT, but I feel like it helped broaden my perspective, and it gave language to a global historical concept that wasn't captured in any other term. But you can see how this plays out with gender. You can see how this plays out with nationality. You can see how the hierarchy is built into all those things in our society. And so this is slightly different than diversity, equity, and inclusion work, but it really does pull from all of those things And there's a slightly different approach, centering healing. But we really think that we still think about everyday diversity. What does inclusion look like, and what does justice look like? So I will turn it over to retired Captain Stacey Ledbetter to talk a little bit about the history of the criminal justice system, and then we'll talk about the work of the law design team in particular after that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sholanna. Appreciate you so much. And I just want to say good morning to the Unitarian Universalist Community Church family, and acknowledge your pastor, Reverend Ludwig McCartney. And so I attend Galilee Baptist Church, where my pastor is Dr. Michael T. Scott. So I wanted to put that in the atmosphere. And thank you for this opportunity. So I'm going to go through these bullet points quickly here, you all. Another thing that we like to impart from the TRHT is that this work is a journey. It can't be one and done. We are privileged to be with you for this short time frame, but I look forward to connecting with all of you who have any interest even after today. So in terms of the history, we have to be real. And I love how you open. Thank you, Dr. Regina, for this invitation and making this happen. So just our country, and things have happened all over the world. There's a lot of history out there, but just contextually in terms of having some starting point, we look at the United States of America and that unfortunate past that was connected to slavery. And as you see here with chattel slavery, but slavery in America in particular, in August of 1619, 20 kidnapped, enslaved Africans. And I want to make that point here. When we talk about slavery, we're converting even language to not call human beings slaves, because that wasn't a career that they chose at all. So they were people who were enslaved. And that's how we want to frame, and we encourage the framing of the term that way. So 20 kidnapped enslaved Africans were brought to the British colony of Jamestown, Virginia, again, August of 2019. And again, about the foundation of capitalism and economics, and at that time, free labor, period. That's what it was. But these people were not considered human. They were considered property. And chattel slavery in particular meant that it was something that happened because of birth. It was a concept from Great Britain, and Virginia made its own law in 1662, creating the status of chattel for Africans, providing that they would be enslaved for life and that their condition as enslaved was transmitted to their posterity, meaning all future generations. Like, this is just the way it's going to be. So it was a brutal, unfortunate situation, but that's what it was. So I'm tying this and wrapping and giving you that foundation, because our criminal justice system and with slavery and just how the setup, if you will, and what was happening initially was still a precursor to our policing today. So just showing you that tie-in. So what happened, there were slave patrols, and the function of those patrols was to police the enslaved persons, especially those who escaped or were viewed as defiant. They also formed river patrols to prevent escape by boat. And the slave patrols were first established in South Carolina in 1704, and the idea spread throughout the colonies. And so those patrols, the individuals who conducted them were called patrollers, patter rollers, paddy rollers, or paddy. So they have some T's in there, T as in Tom, and some D's, D as in David, paddy rollers, by enslaved persons of African descent. And these were organized by groups of armed white men who monitored and enforced discipline upon Black enslaved people in the antebellum U.S. southern states. And what's interesting, when I gave you all the paddy this and the paddy that, even during my career from 91 to 2017, and you all may have heard of paddy wagons. So just showing you how things still transfer through generations. And a lot of times, like, I had no idea during my career that connection was there. So I continue to research, continue to learn, and that's just an example of one of those things. In terms of the slave codes that you see, it was just very interesting. It was very specific, again, to those who were enslaved. And so that then in some of the documents that they had, they used the terminology servants, but who were imported and brought to our country, who were not Christians, so they tied into religion just as well in their native country, shall be accounted and be slaves. So I'm reading you something specific from a document. All Negro, mulatto, and Indian slaves within this dominion shall be held to be real estate. So this is from an official document. If any slave resists his master, correcting such slave, and shall happen to be killed in such correction, the master shall be free of all punishment, as if such accident never happened. So I want to tie that into what Sholanna introduced to you as that hierarchy of human value. And so, again, enslaved were in that bondage for centuries, for a couple centuries. And so, again, that view of a people that's passed down through generations can still hold on. And if you think about it, us even being invited here today, why do we have to be? Why do we have to talk about this? Why do we see the polarization, not only in our community, but in our country today? It came from somewhere. And what we look to do is give people that education so we can have a conversation based on what truth as a part of our, TRHT. So let me move on. Race is a social construct. That's very specific. And it's tied into that hierarchy of human value, everybody. And this means that people in society give it importance and value. And so race versus ethnicity, Black, brown, white, from all over the world versus African, German, Irish, Chinese, etc. Your race is determined by how you look, while your ethnicity is based on the social and cultural groups you belong to. So there is a generational hierarchy of human value based on race and all of the things that we're dealing with today. The U.S. Constitutional Convention, that was from May 1787 through September 1787 in Philadelphia, and decisions were made then on how the United States would be governed, including representation for our states, and the matter of counting those enslaved in the population for figuring representation was settled by a compromise. Some of you may have heard of the 3/5 compromise. And so that was a way, again, we're talking about people with wealth and property, and they wanted everything that they could count. So they put in the enslaved as 3/5 so they could be counted in the population, and individuals were just trying to expand their wealth, even though they considered the enslaved property. And so you tie that into thinking about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the fact when the colonists came over here and they were trying to get away from the king and things that were happening in England and Great Britain, they were trying to get away from things that they ended up establishing here, doing to other people. So again, keeping those things in mind. The Judiciary Act of 1789 was signed into law by President George Washington, as I said, 1789, in the first session of the U.S. Congress. It established our judiciary. So in terms of district courts, circuit courts, the Supreme Court, that foundation was there. So I know you all wanted some history, just wanted to give you some foundational things in terms of dates and structure and that type of thing. These are deep dives that could take full semesters, et cetera, mention that journey to you. So I just wanted to have some touch points. History of policing. Credit for establishing a formal police force was in 1829, and the credit goes to Sir Robert Peel, England's Home Secretary. He famously said, "The police are the public, and the public are the police." A huge concept. Many of you have heard of community policing. That's so big. And so as our governmental entities do their work, we are very much involved. We should know what's going on. We should understand how it works and be able to have that dialogue, that respect, those relationships with people responsible for our safety, et cetera, in our communities, so we can live and thrive in peace. And so just in terms of the United States, just to throw out some dates so you just have a time frame when things were initially established. In 1838, the city of Boston established the first American police force, followed by New York in 1845, Chicago in 1851. So throwing out some things there. And what I wanted to add to you, because you all also wanted to hear a little bit, I don't have the bullet and I apologize, but in terms of mass incarceration, I just wanted to let you know in terms of that, I have something for you here, stand by. And Lana, just jump in because I know we're watching time and everything, you all, so I want to be cognizant of that just as well. So in terms of that, even that term, around the 1970s is when they say that mass incarceration began. But just to give you this stat, the United States has 5% of the world's population, but we have 25% of the incarcerated people. So since 1970, our incarcerated population increased by 700%, everybody, since 1970. And to date, over 2 million people are in jails and prisons. Just to throw out another date for you, in terms of the Kalamazoo County Jail and the sheriff, the position, that was established in 1830, excuse me. Our first sheriff was Delamore Duncan. And that's when Kalamazoo County was founded as a newly formed territory. So again, to give you some frame of reference, what was going on in our country. So the sheriff position is an old term, even around the world, but they're responsible for our counties and our county jail. We have 83 counties in the state of Michigan. Again, just to give you some context of what we're working with. And when people excuse me, are housed in jail, they're either awaiting trial or serving a sentence for a misdemeanor. Misdemeanor sentences are usually up to a year in jail. And if you've heard the term felony, and people are convicted of felonies, that's when they go to prison. And usually the sentence is above a year. So that's contextual to give you some foundational things. Thank you, Lana. We can move on.
All right. Thank you. And I'm sure you all are familiar with the 13th Amendment, and there's been documentaries about that basically share that the clause into that was except by punishment of a crime. So many free slaves were still subject to involuntary servitude if they were accused and found guilty of a crime. So that was the way this was used to connect. Okay, so we're talking about the law design teamwork now. And Stacey, I'll let you share a little bit about the police academy and everything, and I'll jump in as needed.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So as you all see here, we have a wonderful partnership with the Kalamazoo Valley Community College, a police academy. Shout out to KVCC President, Dr. Washington, who's very supportive and is helping us cultivate institutionalizing this. And also the director there, and for full disclosure, is my husband, Victor Ledbetter, who's watching somewhere now. Hey, good morning. But basically what it is us bringing community together with the police cadets to learn some of this historical information that was quickly imparted to you, but we didn't go in depth for a few hours. But in the morning, that's an afternoon segment. In the morning, we build relationships. We do racial healing circles, and that's something we were able to do in person. We had to pivot like everybody else. So even just this past Friday was the 4th engagement we did. We had to switch to the virtual space. And so in a virtual space, we call them virtual healing experiences, but we had between 40 and 50 people in our Zoom room, if you will, combination of cadets and community, having these discussions, building relationship, and it's just a beautiful thing. And so we can later send you some articles. Kalamazoo Community Foundation has done some wonderful articles and even put it in their publications in terms of the things that we've done. And we'd love to see some of your faces in the community. It's not just select people. We're trying to expand our horizons, which is the name of the event and engagement. So that's what that is. The next one, Advocates and Leaders for Police and Community Trust. We affectionately call that ALLPACT. It is hosted, if you will, by the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. And Gwen Moffitt is one of our team members on the law design team, who's a MDCR employee. And she is helping us to build ALLPACT in this community. We've actually already launched. And what does it do? It brings together criminal justice system employees and leaders together with community, everybody. And this is where, even though we're going to talk about it at the end, what can you do? This is where you can be involved. I want to commend some of you watching now and other Isaac members. My understanding is you are Isaac member church. And it's a way for us to learn and grow, learn about the opposite side, bridge some gaps, have some tough conversations. So it's not just a tiptoe through the tulips type of situation, keeping it real, talking about real subjects. So we have a Know Your Rights series coming up starting in August. When we get the flyer together, I will give that information to Dr. Regina and Dr. Charlay. So you would be more than welcome to participate. And Lana, I'll let you come back in on partner support.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things with TRHT we always want to do is continue to lift up folks who've been doing this work for sometimes decades here in Kalamazoo, and also to sponsor different events. So, for example, the YWCA is doing work on school to prison pipeline and addressing school discipline policy. So we supported some of their work. We have supported the Lewis Walker Institute in some of their kind of awareness building video screenings and other things, and they continue to support ours as well. Hope Through Navigation, working with directly previously incarcerated folks coming home and reentering our community. And so we just work to think about how to support all of these efforts, because there's so many things to be done. We're going to get a little bit into the nuts and bolts, but when you think about the expansiveness of the system that upholds mass incarceration and law enforcement issues, there's so many places to insert ourselves. We have the Defender's Office at the table. They're just getting started, but they're doing an amazing job really thinking about how the criminal justice system works, and helping inform us and partner, bringing a legal perspective. So we're always thinking about how to connect the dots, how to raise awareness, and really have this be a community-driven effort at the end of the day. So that's a little bit more about that. And of course, these issues are not a silo. So we know that if you have a criminal record, you're going to have trouble getting housing. We know that if you're a young person whose parent is incarcerated, you're going to probably struggle financially and struggle in school. So we try to think about how these connect. And so, for example, the housing ordinance, one of the main reasons why we made sure to include that, criminal records in the housing ordinance to protect folks from blanket policies, because we know that disproportionately this would impact people of color. So thinking about how this intersects and how to support other folks in our community doing work all the time.
Awesome. Did you want to segue on into the Truth Talks too? Because we have so much going on there too.
Sure, yes. Hopefully you all have tuned into or heard of our Truth Talk series. I think this was the brainchild actually of Captain Stacey and Mr. Ed Genesis a year or so ago, who said, let's create a platform for people in the community to just speak their truth and tell their story. And so since COVID, we've really had one almost every week and then every other week now. And we broadcast right here on Facebook Live and on Zoom. And so please tune in. They're usually Thursdays around 4, covering different topics, but we've had a couple on issues around the criminal justice system, or legal issues, or community safety issues like gun violence. And so we continue to have, and we will have that be a platform where you can learn more people's stories and share, because one of the biggest things is awareness. There's so many false narratives out there that are driven by different agendas. And so when we share our stories, it really helps people in our community understand the issues more, and it helps bridge a lot of the gaps. So as much as you can with your networks, with your family, share the Truth Talk, share this presentation, share the perspectives and stories of people, of real people, so that folks aren't only getting the dominant narrative that may be just very limited and not including the voices of people of color.
Thank you for saying that. And with that, from September 15th to October 15th is Hispanic Heritage Awareness Month. So even there, even if you just look up Hispanic Heritage Awareness Month and learn a little bit more, if that's not your heritage, just to see what's going on so we can give reverence to history and people and contributions. And that would be another example. And so this next bullet here, developing recommendations for the criminal justice system, what we wanted you to see first is what we're even talking about. When you hear the criminal justice system, like what is that? People have a tendency, because it's the front line, it's the face, all the issues going on in policing, or sometimes you may just think about the prison system, who knows, but we don't want to be presumptuous. It's the three parts that you see there. So it is law enforcement and the policing, but it also includes the courts, that whole process of people going through the courts, how they're sentenced, the judges in leadership and everybody in between, from prosecutors to attorneys. You heard the defender's office. There's so many players in there. There's probation, parole, alternative sentencing. Then you also have corrections, which more appropriately, when I mentioned alternative sentencing, would go there. But the corrections piece, so the jails, the prisons, et cetera, et cetera. But we wanted you to know about those three components. When we mention the criminal justice system, this is what we're talking about, all of the pieces and the players therein. Thank you. Next slide, Lana.
Yeah, can you see the next slide there?
Yep, got it now. Okay. So you all see the law design team here, very specific. It is an honor and a privilege to be involved with TRHT. I appreciate Sholanna's support. We cultivated a relationship before I even retired. And so when TRHT was launching in our community, I was very interested and just participated from the very beginning. So I'm grateful to today. I mean, up until this day, and looking forward to continue the work. So though officially retired, I'm still about this, you all. And I encourage other people, just in terms of humanity, individual humanity, everybody. We get stuck in the black and white. We get stuck in this, we get stuck in that. It's about what all of us contribute, our experiences being valued, and just us pulling equity in tow. So as we are in the law design team, and we have several teams, as Sholanna mentioned to you, but this EAT acronym, that helps us keep perspective about what we're going to work on. Education, so big, and that's for all of us. So yes, we mentioned the components of the criminal justice system, but can any of you explain anything that's going on? I mean, you know, just what do you know? We want to know how things work. We're not talking about cultivating and, you know, putting folks through law school and that type of thing, but having understanding, particularly in our very own community. Who are the leaders? Do we personally have any relationships with people in these industries, in these fields? How do they operate? If I have a compliment or a criticism or complaint, where do I go? How do I do it? All that stuff. Education. The A, accountability. Big. So yes, you can have policies and procedures and this, that, and the other, but are our system people living up to them? And so we have to keep them accountable. That we're in a political season. So you talk about accountability with our politicians. They can be pulled in on these different pieces. Why? Bills and laws and the way things are established, et cetera. It's all interconnected. And we have to keep all of those folks accountable. The T, transparency and trust. The transparency, just us having information so we know what's going on, so we're not surprised when things happen. We should just know, as tax-paying community members, that transparency should be there from our governmental entities. Trust, it's going to take time, but we wanted to put it on the table. That is what we're working towards. Right now, the polarization is out there. You all know it. But we want to do better. And it is possible. I'm an optimist at heart. There's a lot of division, a lot of hate. It's very unfortunate, but we can work through it. I hate to use the word magic, but I've seen some of that happen in terms of our racial healing circles. I've seen people develop relationships and foster connections where they thought there were none. So I already know it's possible. And Lana, I'll let you go into the example since I've been talking.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. And these three are so connected, right? So how can we hold our leaders accountable if we don't know who they're accountable to or what their directives are, for example? And then how can we have trust if we don't even know what's guiding decisions? So I think that's just great. So there's some other examples. And I think you all as community advocates and residents, please take these ideas and call your representatives, in Portage or in Kalamazoo or wherever you live, and start asking some of these questions. So for example, when you think about the policing agencies, think about what's the diversity of the agency. Do they live in the community? And I know that's a big issue in Kalamazoo. How do they screen for members of hate group? Now this is tied into the historical part. Historically, there's been members of white supremacist, white nationalist groups. They're attracted to jobs in law enforcement oftentimes. And so you see that there might be, and they operate in secret. So how are these agencies screening for members of hate groups so we don't have folks like that operating in secrecy within these agencies? How do they deal with internal issues of discrimination? For example, there's an open case now of an officer whose hate speech was used against him. And there's an open case right now within the department. So that's within internally, what are the training requirements? The work we do at the police academy, we would love to see the statewide training agency, MCOLS, I'm not sure it's the acronym all the way, but it's the statewide accreditation for police officers and agencies. They set requirements for training and what's required. And so we would love to see more diversity, equity, inclusion be implemented as a requirement, even though we do it here at KBCC as supplemental, just because of the leadership that we have there. This is really, really big, so please, if you have opportunity, call the county prosecutor. He's an elected official, and say, you know, we do not know the demographics on sentencing. There is no place and there's no requirement as it stands for the criminal justice system, policing, courts, and corrections to report aggregated data about their sector to the public. You can sift through court records if you have the time, but we think that that's a really important step in accountability and transparency, because we really don't know. Are there sentencing disparities? Who's getting, you know, who's getting what sentence? Where are folks at? We really, really don't know, and it's mind-boggling to me to know how much reporting is required for other sectors, like in schools, education, even for nonprofits. This type of data reporting is required all over the place. And for the sector this large, and with this much money being invested from public dollars into our policing, from our city budgets and from our state budgets, even national budgets, knowing how much money is going into the sector with no required reporting, just is mind-blowing. And so the more we can call and say, hey, it's up to you, prosecutor, it's up to us at a local level. If we decide we need that data and the community needs to know these things, and to continue to support that effort to get some better data reporting. So please, you know, call and ask these types of questions. And then of course there's always alternatives. So we know our partners at Griffin Place, who are at the law design team, they do restorative justice in schools. And there's been conversations about expanding that work, really addressing root causes of crime through other programs. Think about what type of emergency services do we need as a community to keep people safe, whether it's interventions, mental health crisis response, et cetera. And then what kind of interventions do we need? We know our partners at Isaac do intervention work, and there's other agencies that do kind of intervention work with folks to try to be more proactive and preventative about violent crime. So those are just some examples of things that we're hoping to push for, things that we're looking for partners and community members to continue to push and ask for to build accountability, because we can't have trust if we don't have accountable relationships, right? And we can't have accountable relationships and trust if we don't know what's going on. And so just thinking about all of that, I really think that it's up to us as a community, and that's individually and collectively, to continue to push for some of these things, because we know that there's so much harm that has been done that is similar harm that has been done decade after decade after decade. So this one incident is not just one incident. It's what happened last year and 10 years ago, and what happened to our grandparents, and what happened to their parents. And so this is built up over generations, knowing the history, and that may not be the intention of everybody in the system, but that's what the system was built on. And we know that in order to have real healing and move forward, that transformation has to happen. And we think these are some seeds that we can plant today, all of us together, to push in that direction. All right, Stacey, any final thoughts on that?
No, I look forward to talking to everybody in the coffee hour if they so choose. Steve, I was looking for a note from you. I think that's about our time. It's definitely been an honor to have this opportunity. And I love the way Sholanna used the chat. There's some contact information for us, further questions or comments, our Facebook page, TRHT Kalamazoo. We'd love for you to stay in touch, and we'd love to know if you learned something new today. Have a good one. I see you, Dr. Regina. Thank you so much.